The old man smelled of dust, sun, and too many days without a proper meal. He stood outside the iron gates of the Imperial Meridian Hotel in London, holding a small cardboard sign that had clearly been folded and unfolded too many times. Luxury cars rolled past him every few seconds. Guests stepped out wearing silk dresses, tailored suits, and polished shoes that reflected the evening lights. Their laughter floated through the air, mixed with the scent of expensive perfume. No one slowed down. No one asked a question, and not a single person looked into the old man's eyes. 2 security guards stood several feet away, watching quietly. They weren't cruel men, but they had a job, and the job usually involved making problems disappear without creating scenes. The old man's name was Marcus Delane. He was 64 years old. White hair framed the sides of his head, and deep lines carved across his face told the story of a life that had once been much different. His shirt hung loosely on his frame. One sleeve was torn. His shoes had long lost their soles, and the cold pavement pressed through the fabric with every step. Marcus slowly sat down beside the stone wall near the hotel gate. His stomach made a hollow sound. He unfolded the cardboard sign and looked at it for a moment before placing it beside him. Inside the Imperial Meridian, the scene could not have been more different. 200 guests sat beneath crystal chandeliers that hung from the ceiling like frozen waterfalls of light. Each table was covered with white silk cloth, 4 forks at every place setting, 3 glasses beside each plate. A string quartet played softly in the background. This was the annual gala for Aurelian Capital, one of the most powerful investment firms in Europe. The room smelled of money and white roses and the quiet confidence of people who had never doubted they belonged exactly where they were sitting. The man behind Aurelian Capital was Victor Hale. He was 52 years old, broad-shouldered, sharp jaw, eyes that moved through a room like searchlights cutting through fog. Victor noticed everything, and everyone noticed him. When he walked through the ballroom, conversations shifted. People stood a little straighter. Smiles grew a little wider. But Victor had a strange habit that almost no one knew about. He liked to make bets about human behavior, cruel little predictions, private games he played with his closest circle. He would predict something embarrassing or revealing that someone in the room would do, then he would sit back and watch it happen. So far that evening, he had already won 2 bets. One involved a nervous employee spilling red wine. The other involved a guest making an awkward speech. Victor rarely lost. His friend, Leon, a round-faced man who laughed easily, leaned close to him. "I saw something outside," Leon whispered. Victor lifted his glass slightly. "What?" "A beggar sitting near the gate," Leon grinned. "You should bring him inside here, sit him at one of the tables, and watch how everyone reacts." Victor didn't answer immediately. Instead, he slowly turned the wine glass between his fingers. The idea settled in his mind. Then his lips curved into a thin smile. "Bring him inside," Victor said quietly. Leon blinked. "You're serious?" Victor nodded. "Clean him up a little. Give him a shirt." He paused. "But don't tell anyone why he's here." Leon's grin widened. "You just want to watch." Victor leaned back in his chair. "Yes," he said calmly. "I want to see how people behave when they think no one important is watching." Before the story continues, tell us something. Where are you watching from right now? Drop your country in the comments, and don't forget to like this video and subscribe to Fate and Truth Stories for more powerful real-life inspired stories like this. Now, back to the story. 2 security guards stepped outside the hotel. They found Marcus still sitting beside the wall with his eyes closed. One of them crouched down beside him. "Sir," the guard said quietly, "you've been invited inside tonight." Marcus opened his eyes slowly. He studied the guard's face, then the other guards. Years of disappointment had taught him something about sudden kindness. It usually came with conditions. But after a moment, he nodded. His knees protested as he stood. Inside the hotel lobby, a staff member brought out a white shirt from the lost and found box. It was several sizes too large. Marcus buttoned it carefully. Someone handed him an old pair of loafers left behind by a previous guest. Another employee brushed the dust from his trousers. A young woman combed his hair neatly back. 10 minutes later, the guards led him quietly into the ballroom. They seated him at table 12 near the back of the hall. The reaction at the table was immediate but silent. Guests looked at Marcus, then at each other. A woman in silver dress shifted her chair slightly away from him. A man checked his phone. Another guest offered a tight smile that didn't reach her eyes. Marcus unfolded his napkin slowly and placed it on his lap. Then he looked up at the chandeliers. The lights reflected in his eyes like distant stars. Across the room, Victor Hale watched everything. Every glance, every uncomfortable shift, every tiny movement people made to distance themselves from the old man. But then something unexpected happened. A young journalist named Lena Torres arrived at the table, and the moment she sat beside Marcus, everything in the room began to change. Lena Torres noticed the old man the moment she sat down at table 12. She had arrived a little late through the media entrance, her press badge still clipped to the inside of her jacket. As a financial journalist covering the Aurelian Capital Gala for the third year in a row, she had attended enough events like this to know exactly how these rooms worked. Power sat at the front tables, money sat near the stage, and everyone else filled the spaces in between. But the old man sitting beside her did not belong to any of those categories. His shirt was too large for him, his hands were thin but steady, and the way the other guests had arranged their chairs around him told Lena something instantly. They were uncomfortable, very uncomfortable. Without thinking much about it, Lena picked up the water pitcher and poured a glass for him. Marcus looked at her. "Thank you," he said quietly. His voice surprised her. It was deep, calm, not the voice she expected from someone who had been sitting outside with a cardboard sign minutes earlier. "I'm Lena," she said, extending her hand. "Marcus," he replied. She noticed something else immediately. Marcus was not eating quickly like someone who had been starving. He was taking small, careful portions of food, chewing slowly, as if the meal deserved respect. Across the ballroom, Victor Hale noticed the interaction, but he wasn't worried. Journalists attended his events every year, and most of them understood an unspoken rule. Certain stories never made it past the editing room. Victor returned his attention to his table, accepting congratulations from a visiting banker. The evening was unfolding exactly as he had planned. Meanwhile, Lena leaned slightly toward Marcus. "Are you enjoying the evening?" she asked softly. Marcus looked up at the chandeliers again. "They remind me of something I saw once," he said, "when I was a young man." "Where?" "In Abuja," Marcus said calmly. "In a government building, my first real job." Lena paused. There was something about the way he said those words. Before everything changed. She felt it immediately. "Marcus," she asked carefully, "what did you do before all of this?" Marcus was quiet for several seconds. Then he answered simply, "I ran a company." Lena blinked. Not a small one. Marcus said the name of the company quietly. The moment she heard it, Lena froze. Her heart skipped, because she knew that name. Every financial journalist in Europe knew it. 15 years earlier, the company had collapsed in what became one of the largest investment disasters in modern financial history. Over 25,000 families across multiple countries had lost their life savings. The founder of the company had disappeared before the investigation could fully unfold. No one had ever found him, until now. Lena's voice dropped to a whisper. "Are you telling me you're that Marcus Delane?" Marcus nodded once, slowly, calmly. He did not look ashamed, and he did not look proud. He looked like a man who had carried something very heavy for a very long time. Lena's throat went dry. Every instinct in her body told her to grab her recorder, but something stopped her. Instead, she asked quietly, "Why are you here tonight?" Marcus looked across the ballroom, directly toward Victor Hale. "I came to find someone." Before Lena could ask another question, the master of ceremonies stepped onto the stage. "Ladies and gentlemen," he announced smoothly, "as tradition allows, the floor is now open for any guest who wishes to share a few words." Usually 2 or 3 people spoke, a board member, a partner, someone making polite remarks about success and growth. The speeches were always forgettable. But tonight, something different happened. From the back of the ballroom, Marcus slowly stood. Several guests turned to look. The MC hesitated, then glanced toward Victor Hale. Victor gave a small nod. Marcus began walking toward the stage. The room gradually fell silent, not immediately, but table by table, conversation by conversation, until the entire ballroom was watching him. Marcus reached the podium. He placed both hands on it. For several seconds he said nothing. Then he spoke. "My name is Marcus Delane." The room reacted instantly. A wave of whispers moved through the crowd. Marcus continued calmly. 15 years ago, I built a company that destroyed the savings of thousands of families." He paused. "I crossed a line." The silence in the room deepened, but Marcus was not finished. He reached into his pocket and removed the same cardboard sign he had been holding outside the gate. He placed it on the podium. Then he turned it around. One side read, "I'm hungry," but the other read something very different. "I have proof." Gasps spread through the ballroom. Marcus placed a thick brown envelope beside the sign. "Inside this envelope," he said, clearly, "are 11 wire transfers. Money taken from my company before its collapse. Money that went to a private consultancy account." He paused, then looked directly at Victor Hale. "And that account belongs to a man sitting in this room tonight." Victor's expression changed for the first time that evening. Across the room, phones quietly began appearing in guests' hands, recording. Marcus continued speaking. "I made terrible choices," he said, "but I did not destroy that company alone." He lifted the envelope slightly. "These documents show who helped it happen." The room felt like it had stopped breathing. Victor slowly stood from his chair. His voice was controlled. "This is not the place for accusations," he said sharply. Marcus nodded. "You're right." Then he said something that changed everything. "I already sent copies to 3 international investigators this morning." The ballroom erupted in whispers. Victor realized something terrible in that moment. This was no longer a private game. Marcus looked around the room one last time. "I lost everything because of what I did," he said, "but the truth deserves to exist." He stepped away from the microphone, and for the first time that evening, the most powerful man in the room had nothing left to say. If this story moved you, like the video and subscribe to Fate and Truth Stories for more powerful stories like this. And tell us in the comments, would you have stood up and told the truth or stayed silent?